week's episode of Death Parade, we are finally getting answers to how this show is working. If you're watching this video and you have not seen the previous episodes of Death Parade, I would highly recommend you go and see those first, because I'm about to go into extreme detail on how this world actually works. Okay, so there's 3 rules. Rule number 1, the arbiters must constantly judge people. Number 2, they cannot die, because that would make them too close to being humans. And number 3, they cannot have emotions, because they are dummies. It's simply just an act. In fact, we also get to learn that the people who come and play games are actually dummies themselves. Their souls are actually infused into them, and that's how they take form. The bombshell in this week's episode is that we get to learn that Decim himself is sort of an experimental arbiter who's been created by Nona. He's an arbiter who's been infused with human memories. This is revealed when Nona is hanging out with her good friend Quinn, who used to be the arbiter of the Quinn Decim bar. Quinn herself is just a lot of fun. She's just a drunkard, pure and simple, and she really seems to hate her new job at the Information Bureau, which looks like a total drag. So why exactly is Nona even trying to do this in the first place? Well, if you watch the episode little by little, you can see she's starting to feel really apathetic over the fact that her and the other arbiters are basically forced to do this job over and over and over, to make judgments, to never remember people, and yet they're never allowed to live or die, and yet they're the ones who judge people. I really love where the story is going as well, because I love the fact that Nona herself is sort of like challenging how the arbiters actually do their judgments. She feels that there's more than one way to actually make a judgment call, and maybe human emotions could play a really important role in that, and she's sort of like trying to fight back against the arbiter system, which I think is really interesting. And she seems to also be still competing with Oculus, who's basically just there in the background, and is the only character in the series who I can even say is antagonistic, and I still don't even feel like he's going to take that role as well. Another thing that is really interesting, though, is that that one girl from the last episode, Mayu, is actually still hanging around with Ginty. Yeah, I did not expect that at all. I was sort of figuring that the last episode was going to be completely left up for interpretation, and I just figured, well, she's probably just going to go to reincarnation. No, she's hanging around, and this is completely messing with Ginty, and he almost seems to start having emotions himself, which is really strange, so that's an entirely another dynamic. And there is the possibility that Ginty himself could be very similar to Decim, because both him and Decim were actually arbiters on the very first day. Like, they went in, they took their final exam, which was watching Quinn actually do her judgment call on 2 people who are also playing pool, which is a nice reference to Death Billiards. But still, I just think that's an interesting concept for Ginty, because I'm not really sure where they're going with his part of the story. And we don't even get to see the pop idol. I guess maybe he was just sent somewhere. I don't know. They don't really follow up on any of that. But the other parts of this episode is that we're also getting into the backstory of the black-haired woman for the very first time. In fact, at the beginning of this episode, she finds that one's children's book, and we get our very first small flashback, and I can't tell if that's either her when she's younger, or she could possibly be the mother, and that could be her daughter. That could be a nice twist. But that's probably her when she's younger. But that's all they show of the backstory at all. And she almost talks about it with Decim, but she decides to just drop the whole subject altogether. We also get to learn that all of the dummies within the Quinn Decim are actually previous people that Decim himself has judged. And it's sort of his way of honoring and respecting them. And this probably has something to do with his human emotions, obviously. But it's a very touching and still somewhat scary and kind of creepy scene. I don't know. It's still disturbing that he has all of these dummies all over the place, but you can sort of feel the guy a little bit. It's interesting. As the series is going on, he's sort of like battling with his arbiter self and his human self, and he doesn't know really which one should take charge. And just the fact that that was introduced in this week's episode, the concept of that, really just makes me want to go back and watch the other episodes again just to see his reactions and see how his character is going to grow in the series. But still, this was a fantastic episode right here. So what's the rundown on this week's episode of Death Parade? Amazing is what it was. This whole series is freaking good, and it does a really good job of skipping around and showing us the games and explaining the lore of the world and presenting it in a really nice fashion. And I really like that they finally introduced the character of Quinn, who's been spoken of for a number of episodes, and it makes sense that we've never seen her, because she's constantly been working her ass off at the Information Bureau, which consists of her just hanging out in this big room with a conveyor belt and going through these stones that they sift through, and then they make make those into the memories of the people. And you can remember the scenes in the previous episodes where Decim was actually talking to Quinn and his eye would start freaking out. She was actually sending information directly to him. So all of that has finally been explained, and that's really cool. And Quinn herself, I think, is a really fun character. I especially like the scene where he had Oculus sneaking up on Nona and Quinn when they were knocked out from drinking, and he completely freaks out Nona. I love that he commented that she looks really cute when she's sleeping, but when you look at Quinn right there, she looks like a complete slob. Just a really great demonstration of how fun her character is. According to Nona, she just likes to gab. But enough of my gabbing. What's the score on this week's episode? The animation, the artwork, the atmosphere, the voice acting, the music, which is absolutely amazing, especially during that flashback sequence, was really well done. I love how they're presenting the world, and a lot of questions have finally been answered. I'm especially looking forward to next week's episode because it looks like Nona is actually setting up a judgment game for Decim, and it's going to be two opponents who apparently need a specialist arbiter. So this is going to be one hell of an episode, I can imagine. This week's, though, was another amazing episode, giving us a little more backstory on the black-haired woman, but still not revealing anything about her, getting to learn a lot about Decim and that he's an experimental arbiter, and the possibility that Ginty might be. It's insane. This was just another amazing episode of Death Parade. Honestly, one of the greatest anime series I have ever seen. So I'm giving this week's episode a 5 out of 5, 5 out of 5, 5 out of 5. Check it out. Good stuff. Thank you guys for watching my review. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up. And before you leave, please tell me what you thought about this week's episode of Death Parade. What did you think about the revelation of Decim being an experimental arbiter? And what do you want to see from the rest of this groundbreaking anime series? Remember, guys, if you have not subscribed to our channel, you can do that by clicking on the channel icon right up here. You can also follow us on social media like Facebook and on Twitter, and you should also check out our brand new podcast show, The Powerful Nerdcast. It'll be in the description box below. Thank you guys for watching. Super Kami Guru 9000 out.